When you think command presence, who do you think? Darth Vader or Chuck Norris?
Welcome to another episode of the EMS Wizard podcast. In this episode, we're going to have a conversation about command presence. This can apply in a wide variety of situations, or a wide variety of scenarios. We've got a lot to discuss for this episode. So I think we've already kind of got some command presence established between Darth Vader and Chuck Norris. So Terry, are you Darth Vader or Chuck Norris?
I
He's
don't really
neat.
like. I don't like that the way that you're asking that question.
Oh,
Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris is like the street. You don't cross him. That's not. That's not me. I don't know. When I think command presence, I think of who's that person. Who's that person that you're gonna lead? Uh, who's that person that you're gonna follow? And we talk in some of our things about formal and informal leaders. And I think who is that, whether they're a formal leader or an informal leader, who's that person that you're going to follow, and that command presence. And some of that is going to be how they act, how they that person looks squared away. But command presence isn't per se just something that you meet somebody and you're able to size them up. You get a pretty good feel for that. But command presence is just how does a person carry themselves. And I think that might be one of the things sometimes. Command presence, here's another word that just kind of popped into my mind, is are you confident? And I would say that's probably one of the major ingredients in that command presence is confidence. And those new leaders might not always be confident in themselves, and so they lack that command presence. Walter, what do you think?
So, you're on point there with that. But I think command presence is, someone who can take control but not take control. Does that make sense? So they can take control but not have to take control. Um, it is a difference. And this is where people sometimes mix up command presence. And you and I have talked about this before. You know, it is different when you come on scene and provide leadership, or, even at your station, you're providing leadership. But, let's talk about on scene providing leadership and, trying to call the shots, call the figures, having that presence that's there, than actually doing everything. So trying to get the crew that is there with the incident involved and taking care of it, and you have that 2,000-foot view of that incident with command presence with that, but having that ability to be able to do that, but not point the finger with that, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
All right. So when I think of the a command presence, or as Terry said, a leadership presence, um, to me, it's the calming. I think Walter said confidence. I can see confidence, but I think in EMS sometimes we can. It's sometimes the lines get blurred between arrogance and confidence, and you have to get to where that is. So it's a comfortable, like, command presence. Once you're there, it's not something that you are trying to provide. It's just something you are. So
mhm.
you've got an experience, you've grown, it's who you've become, and when you're there, it's like that presence alone. There's some trust. I think trust is one of those other traits that go into that. I mean, I can't think of strong command presence with folks that don't trust command. I think we did a episode not long ago on movies, but one of the things, I think we even might have mentioned this, Band of Brothers. I think of in Band of Brothers, where they had no faith in whoever, Lieutenant Sobel, who was leading them in boot camp or whatnot that they were doing,
Yeah.
and they just didn't have no faith in him. He had no command presence from that, but he was very authoritarian. He was very, do these things, and very much a disciplinarian when it came to that. And I know EMS leaders that's how they feel about things. So I feel like although they may be very good black and white book readers, rule followers, those type of things, very poor command presence. Fear, are they ruling by fear or respect? That was another thing I was giving some thought to or whatnot. So I think some of this stuff is very trait worthy. Like I was going to ask the question, and that is, do you think command presence can be taught, or could it only be experienced?
And see, and that was going to be my whole question, is about the education piece on command presence. Like, this is a very important thing, I think, for us as a new paramedic. This is a new EMT. This is a skill that we should be at least having a conversation about at some point, and kind of setting ourselves up for success on that. Because you think about law enforcement, great example of someone that can walk into the room and that has that level of command presence. It's because we use that sometimes to our benefit as EMS, because the patient's actions and words and everything tend to change whenever somebody with a gun and a badge walks into the room. And we use that to our advantage sometimes it's to our disadvantage. But that command presence can very much change the tone in the room, can kind of very much change the scenario and the environment. If you have, you could be the greatest clinician in the world, but if you can't control a situation, if you don't have that command presence, you're going to struggle a lot. So how would you teach that command presence other, just putting them in that scenario, and how to have those conversations with difficult people, and really some of the most simple things that a lot of people probably don't think about is, if you're going to walk into the room with your, shirt tail
Mark,
untucked
I can't
and your
take it
boots
anymore.
look
I
like
just
crap.
I have to interrupt you. I can't take it
Why?
anymore. This is killing me because because you're talking so much and we haven't interrupted you yet this episode, number one. Number two, John is laughing, seeing on my face how I've just wanted to say this for like the last 3 minutes. I'm reminded of a sound bite from several episodes ago, and so I'm going to reiterate it on this episode here. Is I think a lot of it is when we're teaching and we're working with folks, where I made that comparison of Christmas morning, and a lot of times with folks realizing that radio flyer wagon that was underneath of the tree, now that's you, and you have that inner ability. And so I think when we're talking about this stuff, when you say teach it, number one, maybe modeling behavior and showing positive folks to say this is the behavior that you want to model. And so when we talk about Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan and Tom Hanks's character, grapes go up, and all of the things that he models for his soldiers is number one. But number two, that awareness. Once you're aware of it, oh, hey, this is a thing, just like many other things in life. Once you're aware, you're able to take action.
Do you think, though, it comes from, and now we're going back to the roots of what we've talked about in our officer program, and that is, as I'm sitting here thinking about this thing through, do you think we're led to grow our command presence for those of us that have been in those leadership positions by negative impacts we've received from bad commanders? Or do you think we read books about extreme ownership, or we watch some really great stuff by Simon Sinek or something, and then we take that and become that? Which do you think, we know how paramedic EMS folks tend to, they're driven by negativity, because that's how guys like Walter and I teach them to be, respond to negativity, because that's what we need. But once you get into that managerial leadership role, how much of that are you taking and saying, the lessons learned piece tend to focus on negativity? Do you think that's an important piece? I think we are going to pull from negativity. Do you think it's important to differentiate that and it makes a better commander from that or from something positive? Oh, okay. Just check.
I don't know. I mean, if we look at the Branch Davidians, what's his name from the Branch Davidians?
The guys in Montana,
Yeah,
California.
Hannah Montana.
Oh, yeah.
But I think you can have negative command presence, but I just wanted to hit on this for a second that dude obviously had amazing command presence because he got people to commit suicide. If you believe what some of the stuff is that's now David Koresh, but David Koresh had a command presence and an infectious energy. So
Walter, what do you think? Do you think, look at yourself personally. Do you think Walter Mead's being level-headed as he is, being a person that can interpret rule and do practical application to that from the street, do you see Walter as being someone that takes away more lessons from negative command presence than you have positive command presence?
Hmm, I don't know. I think it's a combination of both.
Split 50-50?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I can't put a number on it, but I think it's some of both because, you see the negative, you see the positive things, and you pull from both to be able to make you. So, I think it's some of both. I think it's really some of both. And I think, again, we go back to, you know, and even go back to the start of, why are you in this class? Did you see somebody that couldn't do it negative, or B, did you see somebody who did a really great job? And I think that comes from that as well, if that makes sense.
How do you know which side is right though? I mean, if you're not in, I mean, you're basically going off of the feeling that you have, right? Would you
Correct.
say? Yeah,
Correct.
so
It's all you, and you have some very cocky people who think they have a very strong command presence, and they probably have a command presence in the negative way, not the positive way. But they feel that they are in the positive way until they're trained and taught differently that that is not the case. And, I think Terry said, when you have that molding of that helps that person become better and learn the right way. But some people don't know the difference. So they only know what they know. So they only are able to perform what they know.
and so what I would say, kind of to jump board off of what Walter is saying, is if I'm building my team, not just a best friends, but I'm building my agency, John, where you're describing some of those traits of Walter, somebody who's able to interpret rules, somebody who is black and white, but they don't just live in that black and white world. You're describing Walter and those positive relationships, that positive person on the team. I have that positive relationship with Walter. I think that positive has the ability to shape that because maybe I'm more willing to listen. I think negative does, just like in the cave person days of saber-toothed tiger out there try to kill me. I'm not going out there now. And so we have some of that negative stuff. And there are scientific studies that talk about you are more likely to remember a negative interaction. And it's something like 10 to 1 than a positive interaction. And so maybe that's why some of that negative lingers with us. I think that the positivity has that TIA Terry acting up. That positivity has the ability to shape us because if I have that bond with Walter and Walter says, "Hey Terry, when you do this people don't react well. I'm probably more likely to take that pause and to say what can I change? Let me change this.
Well, and I think that probably law enforcement does probably the best job of training command presence because that's what they do. And Mark said the same thing with that. And I think that, we look at that in a different realm of command presence and I'll use things such as scene safety, getting resources that are needed, being able to help manage and control the scene, or be able to help control and manage your shift. So, I think that's when EMS looks at command presence to that. And, we don't offer a whole lot of training with that. We give them, but hey, who knows that we're giving all the right information when we're trying to educate our team and building up our team when we do that, or we just trying to make little Walters, little Terrys, little Johns, little Marks. So, what are we trying to do with that? But I think that is part of, and you look at any large organization, when there is a change, and people hate change, but when there is a change in the leadership of an organization, they're bringing in who's going to be on their team, or making people that are going to be on their team to be able to have that command presence, to be able to shape the team of what they and mold the clay of the organization, what they want it to be.
Yeah, and I think one thing you hit the nail on the head there, Walter, is command presence is something that obviously is taught. We learn from by example, usually from positive or negatives. But I think command presence, as you may have learned it, is probably going to be different than when John learned it, when Walter learned, when Terry learned it, or whenever I learned it. And I think the command presence that I may even know currently might not be the correct thing to do now with the current culture of EMS, because there's a lot of things that we used to say and do and get away with. There was a different level of command presence that we probably come up with early on in our career, compared to if we were to use that same technique now, probably wouldn't be as effective.
Well, and that was one of the words I wrote down. You said the word culture. My concern with the culture part, and I think it was Walter that mentioned it just a second ago, would be that's all fine and dandy, is if you are able to turn out people that you can that are modeled in what we would whoever think is the right way. But what if it is Darth Vader's? The Darth Vaders of the world represent someone who feel they are right in the way they do things. They manage the way that they manage, and they don't care if the Death Star blows up or not, because they'll just build another one and another one and another one. So, a culture has a lot to do with that, and I mean, that ties into the second word I just wrote down, and that is why your network is so important. If my network was only Walter and Mark and Terry, then that's a very closed way of looking. And it look good if it is, if you guys are right. Bad if it is, if you guys are part of the empire, and then all of us, and then you've built what we've talked about before, that good old boy network of way of doing things. But
That silo.
that network needs to be at least large enough so that you have folks that differ in the way that they think enough. And then again, we're coming right back to, how do you know if it's right and wrong? And I think it's going to come back to what we've always talked about, the way your mom and daddy raised you kind of stuff. So
You heard me say one thing. I'm going to interrupt you for a minute, Terry. You've heard me say one thing in the past. Every person needs to work in a different organization.
Yep.
Because they work in the same organization and they only know the culture of that organization. And people can say the green is the grass is greener on the outside, but it's not always greener. So you don't ever know. But if you stuck in that one agency and you don't have anything, you don't know any different.
Stay 1 year, go. Stay 1 year, go. Stay
No, John,
Get that 1 year
not like
pin.
you, not like you 1 year pin, John, but
That 1 year pin.
even part time another agency. Go ahead, Terry.
So maybe it is, perspective, because it's a now defunct agency, but I remember going to West Edgecombe after Hurricane Floyd, and just in a couple days, seeing the perspective and seeing some of the differences that they had in that agency. And speaking of perspective, if we're talking about what is it, Star Trek Wars, whatever this is that John is talking about, some movie that I don't know anything about, is it possible the Empire and the Rebels, and we think from our perspective that the Rebels are the good ones, but
The
is it
Jedi.
possible? Is it possible that the Empire is really the good people and that the
Right.
Rebels are really the bad? I don't.
Yeah, it goes back to a conversation I remember John and I having a few months ago. I asked the question just to kind of pick his brain. How do you tell the difference between someone that's building a strong team versus someone that's just hiring within their clique or within their circle or what have you? How do you tell the difference between one and the other? And the answer just made perfectly good sense. If the people that's being selected to go into to be a part of that team are doing a good job, and if they were picked because they did meet those requirements, they did show that they were the ones that could do that job in those positions. So are they rebels or?
Yeah, and I've said it for a long time. Raised on keeping up with what you were talking about, Terry. Raising on thinking that the Jedi is good, but as you read more into the book, it's the Jedi that supported the rebels that overturned the government.
Hold
And
on,
I
hold on,
mean,
hold on. John read a book.
No, he couldn't have.
Did I
It's
just hear
probably a
John say?
comic.
Did I hear John say reading a book, and yet you keep reading in the book? Sure.
what did you hear? Did I say book at all?
You did.
Yeah, you
You
actually
did. You
referenced a
said
book like you
you
read it.
referenced the book like you read it.
I ain't read no book. So come on
Clearly.
here with these lies. I mean, it's
He
one
listened
thing
to
to
it.
come and jab and make fun, but don't you accuse me of reading no book. This is where we're gonna draw the line. We're gonna throw hands in a minute. Now we're gonna switch to the Chuck Norris side of command presence in a minute. If we get to accusing me of reading books and
So
stuff.
maybe that's true of the bad leaders. Maybe the bad leaders don't know that they're bad leaders.
That's right.
Well, I
Mm,
think they
just can't know
don't.
what you don't know.
Yeah, I just said that. You don't know what you don't know.
That's what I was getting at with the whole
Yeah, but
Vader
I said
idea. I
it.
mean, they are
I
rooted
said it.
in, you know, the way they learn, the way they know. So who corrects them? That's the other problem, right? If you unintentionally think, to no fault of your own, you don't know that what what you do is affecting people that way, and you ascend to the top level, is it at that point that you're incapable of flexibility, of expansion, of opening your mind to sort of go with the times? And a few minutes ago, I wanted to ask Mark, the track that Walter and Terry and I have been on is a little different in just age because Walter's so old. But with you being just baby Mark,
You're still the
the
oldest.
Daddy
Let's just
Walter.
clear that. Just clear
you
that
being
air.
baby
You're
Mark,
still the
Daddy.
oldest.
Daddy Walter.
it's funny to me that Mark is landing in the same lines of a different generation, but very similar concepts, formulation and stuff, as how he's growing and stuff. And I was just wondering, your influence you've talked about before being your grandfather, being your dad, but outside of that, take that out, take the family out. What type of influences, Mark, have you seen that was impactful to you? Was it a church? Was it a grocery store manager? I mean,
Yeah, so just some of it was some of my earlier employment, just growing up on a farm, working on a farm in that environment, whenever, the boss man said to do something, you just done something. And that's just how that worked, and then as I started working at McDonald's, and that's a very structured organization, some serious training that you go through. It might not seem like it, but there's some pretty serious training that you go through there. And
Well, yeah, you got to figure out how to break the ice cream machine.
I was going to say ice cream
wait for
machine
hours.
maintenance is not a part of their.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does not take
Or-
hours to take that thing out of service to clean it. By the way, that's a farce.
But but Mark, that's a good analogy. I think training has changed at McDonald's because probably when you worked at McDonald's years ago was completely different than working at McDonald's today. Do I think they still have training to go through? I think they do, but is the training different? And I think they have had to change that training because of the difference. I don't know what you want to call it, the difference in people and employees and the difference in generations that have now come up that is different than what McDonald's used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's just take a McDonald's.
So let me play John Wilson to John Wilson.
This might be
Normally
good.
he's the one that stirs this. I enjoyed playing the part of John Wilson that one episode that he wasn't here. How do you teach that, John, to these young new leaders, these folks talking with an individual, a paramedic today with aspirations of being a supervisor? What is that lesson? What is something that we say back to that paramedic?
So I am actually from the school that believes that you can't teach this, that command presence is what results from years of experience and learning to listen and learning, knowing the rules. So when I think of rules, I think of like Walter. Walter knows rules and stuff. I ain't gonna say he follows all of them all the time, but he knows when to and when not to.
Rules are meant to be broken at times.
Yeah. So I mean, so there's a part of that I think a person has to develop, and to me that's younger. But if you come in trying to teach a 22-year-old paramedic, 23-year-old paramedic command presence, I don't think it's going to fall. I think it's going to. Here's the thing. Those that do, that's called the military. That's called law enforcement. They do have guns, and so command presence is by force and fear, not experience and wisdom. And so I don't think you can teach it. I think it's important, going back to what I was saying, in development of the culture and the network that you have to gain wisdom over time. And how does wisdom come about? Through bad decisions sometimes, right? Sometimes it's good decisions and you get wise and say, hey, that worked. But doing the wrong thing sometimes, and not intentionally, but making a bad, decision and then learning from it so that you know why you don't do those things, that develops wisdom, which I think folks see that wise eye in you and they're like, that's command presence. So I think it's teaching people to be open, that command presence is a development over time is what you teach folks. That's just my perspective on it.
And see, and I think there's aspects of command presence that is trainable. There's certain aspects of it that you can. So, whenever you walk into the room, how you project yourself, are you well dressed, well groomed? Something as simple as that is what can make or break the process. Whenever we talk about, building rapport with your patients, making direct eye contact with the individual that you're talking to, is speaking clearly, being able to clearly communicate. A lot of those things kind of add up to set someone up for success to develop those more finite, command skills, I think. So I think there's some of those things that we can probably set people up for by getting those, foundational things kind of out of the way.
Yeah, and Mark, with that, I think, for command present, and I agree, some of the things you can do, I don't think that you can specifically teach it, but I think there's some soft skills that we can apply to it to be able to help out. But, I think the person going in with open communications and some goal setting of what they want to do and being a team member, even though they're the command leader, still being a member of that team. I think mutual trust, mutual respect, I think, those things help build the command presence. And if you disregard those, then you are not going to earn that command respect.
So if I were to say command presence is chocolate chip cookies, I'm a fat man, love my cookies, I love my barbecue, and the ingredients, we were to take some of the ingredients, trust.
Barbecue cookies? How did that even go together?
Yeah, you smoke them. Trust, communication,
That's some duplicati stuff right there.
I don't even want to hear what you got to say. Is that the TIA kicking in, Terry? Cookies, chocolate chip cookies. And my barbecue.
All on the bun, a little bit of slaw.
What?
Yeah, it's disgusting. Anyway, continue, Terry.
Yeah.
But yes, Terry, you're making a recipe. I agree. You're making a recipe for success by doing those things. And, like even Mark talked about, with eye contact and communications and open communications and teamwork, you're kind of developing that recipe for success. But if the person's at the top and doesn't follow that recipe, that's where you still have trouble. But I mean, that's another topic for another day.
Well, and going back to John's question earlier about, where did I learn a lot of that stuff from? Like my grandfather and my father in the fire service and rescue service back in the day. I learned a lot of that from what I know in my experience from, some of my FTOs, my paramedic instructor, my shift supervisor, where I saw that from other people. But that's all that I knew because I've always been, for 16 years now in the same agency. So it's just been this experience that I've had in this one agency. Yeah, I picked up on a couple of things where I've done paramedic clinicals here and there, but I mean, talking about, just a handful of hours, right? You're not talking about a ton of experience outside, but I think that's, what going back to what you guys were talking about earlier was that outside experience. That's how you know. I mean, how do you know that you're the good guy or the bad guy whenever the only place you've ever lived is the Death Star? You don't know. You think you're the good guy because you would like to think you're doing the good things, but if you never get out of the Death Star, you never really see all the terrible things that they were doing, right?
16 years at one agency, that's important. It's the 17th year that remains to be seen with you, Mark.
The 17th year into the future. I don't know. Might learn something new. Might learn something different.
Interesting. Sounds like a rumor.
Never know.
Sounds like a rumor's getting started there, Wilson. Sounds like a rumor's getting started.
I heard a rumor today. I did hear a rumor today.
Did you hear a rumor today?
Yeah, but I don't like spreading rumors.
I heard a rumor the other day too. I'm not talking about it today.
I'd love to delve into this, but I think gentlemen, we're almost out of time, so we'll
Are you cutting it
have to
short?
save that.
Okay.
Terry's
save that
clockbusters have kicked in.
The topic for next week.
Time to take his medicine and go to bed.
He's going to go smoke cookies and barbecue or brisket.
I'm gonna do it with my real best friend.
While we wait for the big announcement.